A live counter starts. I assume everyone in the world is watching us right now, Marama. So
Instantly. They're all there immediately. Second we go live, they're all waiting.
yeah. So everyone who's watching, the millions and millions. First of all, welcome to the call, Marama Carmichael. Welcome to the call.
Thanks, David. Lovely to be here. Always a pleasure.
So I love your book, Fixing Frankenstein, and how to fix your Frankenstein business is the topic for today. So I suppose maybe give us a bit of a background. How to fix your Frankenstein business? Where's this all come from?
So I own a company, a web agency or marketing agency called Oracle Tree, and I found over the years, and also working with business owners in some other sort of bits and pieces that I'm part of, that a lot of business owners start business and they're really, really good at their thing, and then
Yep.
business grows and they end up with this kind of Frankenstein business where things are kind of working, but they're kind of not working, and over the time they fixed a problem and bolted something on, and then it's worked for a bit, and then they've come up with another problem. And being business owners, they're really good at problem solving, so they solved that problem and stuck another bit on, another bit and another bit and another bit, and they ended up with this sort of lumbering along, kind of too big for itself, not quite working very well business that they don't know what to do with, because they don't know like whether to tear it all down and start again, or whether to bolt something else on and that'll fix it, or what to do to fix the problem. And so
It sounds
I
like
think that,
renovating a house, doesn't it?
yeah, absolutely,
After about three or
absolutely.
four renos, you start looking at it going, geez, it looks like a lot of
Ooh,
boxes stuck together.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Same thing. And I think a lot of I found that over time, everyone's been specializing so much, like experts have been specializing and everything, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But the problem that leads to is that the business owners are the ones who have to have the whole thing in their head. And then they hire their experts in on the specific things. But it's the business owner who's expected to think of all the things.
Mm.
Um, and most of the people I work with anyway, they're not trained in business. They don't know
Yeah.
what to do. They don't know what they don't know. They're not the right person to hold that entire vision in their head of how all the many pieces are going to fit together without some kind of guidance and sort of help along the way to hold it all. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I often equate like a person running a business is a bit like a 4-year-old taking a Great Dane for a walk.
yeah,
The question is
exactly,
who's walking who, right? And
exactly,
takes off on its own tangent because inevitably the market will dictate what you should and shouldn't do. And if you want to survive, you follow the market. But after a while, you
exactly.
end up with something that's sort of really nothing like what you originally thought.
Exactly. And you can get really reactive as well. So it's like, okay, there's this problem, I'm going to fix the problem. Here's this problem, I'm going to fix the problem. And
Yep.
they end up like, the number of people I know who are working ridiculous hours, like the worst hours. They would never, if they were working for a boss, they would never put up with the stuff that they put up with.
Yep.
But it's their own business, so they do.
They suck it up.
Um, yeah, they suck it up and they work the ridiculous hours, and they're up at 2 in the morning doing the books that they shouldn't be doing, and they're like all of that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So tell me, fixing Frankenstein, when I think about a house that's been renovated 17 times, sometimes it's easier just to pull the whole thing down and start again.
Hmm. Yeah.
What, what's the theory behind fixing Frankenstein? Is it a similar approach? Is it about starting again, or is it actually about...
It's not really, not usually. There will always be pieces that you can use
Yep.
that work. It's sometimes you have to start some things again. So sometimes, so our core business is marketing and web and branding and stuff like that. So sometimes you do need to, if that structure isn't right, you do need to kind of start that bit again. But even then, there's always other stuff that you can reuse. So your website, your copy that you've worked hard on will probably be at least the base form for the other copy. So there's nothing's ever wasted completely.
Okay.
But yeah, sometimes you do need to pull some stuff down, knock out walls. I say more than a straight demo and rebuild. For the most part, there'll be some fairly heavy renovations sometimes, but sometimes it really is like you just need an annex or you need a missing piece. So I usually use like an analogy of like a forest or a rainforest, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's an ecosystem. And sometimes there's a dead spot. Something might not be flowing properly into something else. So you just need to fix that flow up, and then everything gets unblocked and it all works.
Okay.
Sometimes you need to clear something out, and sometimes you need to build something new, and sometimes it's a matter of so if you're really deep into one particular platform, for instance, and it's working for you, but that bit isn't bolting into another bit properly, it is, do you get rid of both the bits and get a new thing together? Do you use the one that's working for you and do something else? And I think it's important to make sure that you manage the change as well. So if it's working for the business but it's not working for one other thing, then maybe the other thing is the things that changes. If
Gotcha.
that makes sense.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So, is there a methodology or a mechanism that you use to go through this assessment and deciding what to keep, what to get rid of?
Yeah, absolutely. We have clients who work with it. So the book goes through like happen to have it here.
Yeah.
It has a like there's multiple chapters in there that take you through your own sort of assessment and everything.
Yeah.
People who work with us through Oracle Tree, we like take them through a discovery process where we dive into it. But the book goes into, right down to the basics of setting your purpose and your mission and really creating what kind of business you want to have. And some business owners have never really thought about why they're in business, and they end up creating something that they actually don't want, and they haven't stopped to think about. It's the Great Dane analogy. The Great Dane pulls them somewhere that they never wanted to go in their world, like ever, because they weren't taking charge and they weren't setting the vision, they weren't setting the stuff. So it takes you through all of that process about hiring. Marketing obviously has got a big section of it because that's what we do in our other company. But the book is more than that. It's really is like a summary book, and it's short. It's not very thick, Flixie.
No, it's very thin.
It's big. It's only 143 pages with exercises and all sorts of stuff in there.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
Because I think, it is funny because a lot of people go into business for the right reasons. And one of the things I've learned is, if you ask people, why do you go into business? There's usually 2 or 3 different comments. Usually one is freedom. So I can make more money and work less hours. Well, the other one is I was forced to because I couldn't get a job and I was only and you sort of listen to that and you go, well, that's interesting. So you didn't have a choice. You got in a business, so you sort of did it. Or the other one is that they sort of have this dream, that they want to get into. And inevitably, they go in with all the right intentions. They go, right, I'm going to make this thing work and I need to make at least as much as I did in my job or better. The ones that had the dream, they go, I want to work less hours, I want to make more money. And inevitably, 5 years down the track, when you say, how are you tracking? It's almost the opposite, isn't it? They're working harder than they ever did for anyone else and they're making less money than is legal. You go, well, what just happened? And they go, we don't know. We started over here, we ended up over there. So this whole idea of reassessment, and for me, it's funny because I use that building analogy often. And I'll talk about business planning, and most people go, yeah, we need a business plan. I go, do you have one? They go, no, or yes, it's up here. Or my favourite is...
yes, I did it 10 years ago and I've never looked at it again. I don't know what it is.
And so how did it go? And they go, it was great. We did the planning, we executed on it, and we got to where we are. And I go, great, so did you write another one? And it's like, no. And it's funny because if you go to a builder and say, I want you to renovate my house or build my house, the first thing they say is we need to create a plan. You go, don't worry about that, just start. And that's not only crazy, it's illegal, right? But in business, you can do this. You can say, I'm just going to start my business with no plan and just wing it.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about this whole fixing Frankenstein, and I look at the analogy of the renovation, you can take a box onto the side of a house and call it a room. Or you can look at the whole house and say, well, let's work out strategically how to make it blend into what we currently have. And that's way more expensive. But it also adds value to the house as opposed to decreasing the value.
And it's better to live in as well while you're there.
Yeah.
And
often people...
And I think planning is crucial. Like it's like we do quarterly planning, and that's in there as well. It's like, what can you do? What are the meeting rhythms? And it is about that regular assessing and regular finding. Is what we're doing still working? Has the market moved?
Yep.
Has the business moved? Have my desires moved? Have my team moved? So when we first started, we were like full-on web agency, and now the market moved. People didn't need websites as much as they needed the holistic thing, and so now we're much more marketing focused. And I think you probably find the same with what you do. Is that people's needs change, and as the problems change, the solutions need to change, or else
so much
stay around.
When I started 20 years ago, we used to do plans annual business plans. Write your business plan for the financial year or the calendar year. Set it all up, decide on your trajectory, and just make sure you're on track. And then we moved to quarterly planning. Quarterly planning was great because all of a sudden you would look at it every quarter. It's a bit like BAS. Everyone sort of complains about BAS, but it forces people to look at their financials every quarter. And then we realised that wasn't enough either. So we started moving into 8-week plans. And one of the reasons behind it was because the economy changes quite quickly. And anyone who has an annual business plan, I think my favourite meme through the whole COVID thing was most people's business plan didn't anticipate this happening, did it?
Exactly.
And so when things happen, things change, like the economy changes. I think it's time to reassess the business plan and say, is it still valid? Do we need to actually make amendments? So it's about moving through this planning process in a dynamic way.
Absolutely. And they're making, and I think the thing is as well is oftentimes people seem to think that making the plan will do the work, and it doesn't necessarily. And in my experience anyway, people are very optimistic about what they can achieve. I think the science proves this, that people are overly optimistic about what they can achieve in a short period of time and underly optimistic about what they can achieve in a long period of time.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to have like that big vision of like, the 5-year plan, the 10-year plan, the mission, like what is your purpose? What's the overriding thing that will carry through no matter what widget you're happy to be selling, what your service is, like what is your actual purpose, which will carry you through all the hard times, and then make all the planning on top of that, and then get people aligned with that purpose. And I think that often the sort of purpose and values and all that kind of stuff are seen as a very what's what I'm looking for, like
fluffy
mental thing. Yeah, like a mental thing, like it's a analytical, corporate sort of thing, not an actual practical tool. So our core values, we use them every single day at work. We coach, we hire by them, we fire by them. Not that we fire people very often. We coach people on them. We'll talk about them with our clients, with our team, and everybody that is in our aura is in alignment with those core values, yourself included. Like, if I don't hang around people that don't align with the core values. And
I think it's funny because people almost do that intrinsically, but it's not by planning. And this is the tough bit, because most people do know what they're trying to achieve in their business. You can ask them and they will answer the questions. The issue that I find is that they can't articulate it in writing, which means when they go to share it with their team, or even with their clients or their prospects or their partners, the message gets mixed, right?
Yeah.
And so we talk about it as fluffy and corporate often. People go, oh yeah, vision, mission, culture. Yeah, we know that's for corporates. Okay. Let's talk about where you want your business to end up and how are you attracting the high caliber people. Then it comes down to saying, well, these things are now pretty critical and they become part of the activity.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And even more and more now, like with the employee, the great resignation and all that kind of stuff. Like, people are more and more wanting to work with people who are in alignment with their own personal purpose and what they run the planet for and all that kind of stuff. And it's a lot bigger question. And I think that business owners as well, like how many people do you know, like do you hear all the time, that whole thank God it's Friday thing? Like a lot of the planet hate going to work with a passion. They hate it. And I think one of the powers that we have as small business owners is that we get to change the world, like literally on a day-to-day basis, the way we live our life and the way we treat our team and the way we have a culture and create all that kind of stuff. It can have like a massive ripple effect, not only to our clients, but to our team members and their family, and giving back to the wider community and all that kind of stuff. And because we're smaller, we can be more nimble and be a little bit freer to do stuff in a different way that might not be, might not work in big corporate, because we can be more nimble and more flexible, but we can make the world better. And that's pretty cool.
It's amazing, right, that you say that, because for me, it's always been when the Great Resignation was announced and everyone was terrified, and I thought, what's this all about? And they're saying, well, the employees are getting smarter these days. They start checking out who they want to work for. And I remember 21 years ago, one of my first mentors in business, we were talking about recruiting team members and finding the best players. And he said, first thing you need to recognize is you get the team members you deserve. It's a really painful statement and horrible statement. Because then you can't point the finger at the economy. You can't point the finger at the people that are applying for the jobs. It's literally saying, what am I attracting into my business? And this comes back to what you were talking about before with values and culture, is even though it doesn't look tangible on the outset for a business owner who's very practical about where do I get my next client, how do I get people to pay more, how do I get rid of my competitors, in the end, when you build a small business and you try to grow it by bringing team members in, if you bring the wrong people on, it's expensive.
Absolutely.
And
that's a fortune.
The other thing that's happened, and as you were talking, it sort of reminded me, we used to be in what was called the industrial age. And this is going back nearly 100 years. And in those days, to make money, you had to get a job in a production line, and you worked 9 till 5, and you moved widget A from point A to point B, and that's what we're paying you to do. And so everyone who wanted to make money had to get jobs, because there was only big corporations, and then there were small traders on the street. And I think that's changing dramatically, because the communication channels have improved so much that you can run a small business from pretty much anywhere. Probably 50% of small business, if not more now, is run out of people's homes on a computer. So the barrier to entry has dropped, which means that the small businesses can be more dynamic and global, and they can employ people all over the world. And you think,
exactly.
And we can be terrified by it by saying, oh my God, what about job protection, keeping money in the country? And you say, well, that's all industrial age thinking, right? We're a global economy. We always were, right? There were
Mm-hmm.
barriers to going global, but now they've disappeared. So any person working from their home on a computer is global.
Mm-hmm.
What it means is a competitive environment where people can actually start a business with almost no. They
Yeah.
can employ people with almost no sort of lock-in and commitment to, paying high wages or having, an environment. They can do it all online. So
Mm.
I think even more importantly now than ever, the small business owner has this opportunity or ability to become game changers, as you just described.
Mm.
And they can attract high caliber people from all over the world, and they can pay for 1 hour of someone's time if that's all they need, or they can get someone full time. And it doesn't matter whether they're in Australia, in America, or in the Philippines. It's really about, do they do what I need?
Mm-hmm.
This puts pressure back on the business owner to be really clear about what is it they're trying to build.
Mm-hmm.
Because if your
And
vision,
I think
yeah,
it's visual and clear. And I think Oracle Tree is virtual by design. We always were, like when we started back in 2009. There was a whole story about that. Ask me about House Fire one day. And it was because I created that Frankenstein business. I had another business that I felt trapped in, and I didn't
yeah,
want to be trapped. And so I blew it up and started Oracle Tree in its first instance. And
yeah,
when I first started, there was me and a freelancer, Claudio, who still works in the company.
yeah,
Claudio is based out of Romania, and he's awesome. Love him. And now, we're a massive team, but we're always virtual. And the one thing I find is that it's not even necessarily hiring, internationally, although we have got like an international team.
yeah,
We also got team who are sort of in more remote areas, or people who want the freedom to move. So I've got one team member who's moved, I think, 3 or 4 times since she's worked with us. And she could move, and she took a couple of days off while she moved, but there was no, oh, I'm moving, I need to find a new job and quit my job and all of that stuff. It's like, you don't have that. So you've got the freedom for people to live their life, to be in a remote area and not spend half their day traveling to the nearest capital city to have a decent job, to be flexible and be home for their kids after work and all of that kind of stuff. And you can create that lifestyle for people, which, again, is that kind of ripple effect, and pay them like, proper money, and
of course.
have them have their life and do their thing. It's great.
And this is the most exciting thing. Like when people talk about COVID and the disaster, I look at it as a cleansing, because what it did is that everyone now knows what Zoom is. Right?
Yeah.
Everyone has it on their phone and they're comfortable with it. And even though people are zoomed out, they start to trade off the travel time and the convenience versus actually just having this communication that we can in a live stream.
Yeah.
And so it's not either or, it's sort of and.
Mm.
And what it means is we can communicate with people easily and effectively, quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And so a business plan of 3 years ago probably didn't have that as a strategy. It was like we can do teleconferencing if we have to. But now it's like, hang on, we have to allow it because some people prefer it. Now some people won't. So you've got this flexibility. It's interesting. I love the idea of business being readily available to everybody. And I think what it does is, the problem with business for a lot of people is it's already reckoned. It actually, the numbers don't lie. So if you have an idea and you can't get it to market effectively, it shows up in the bank account.
Yeah,
let's talk about sort of tactical things that people should be doing. You've got this whole philosophy around how people should fix their Frankenstein business.
Mm-hmm.
What's the mechanism that they should be applying in terms of step 1, 2, and 3?
I think, I think the very first thing is to get clear about what sort of business that you want to have, and realize that if you're the business owner, you get to choose.
Yeah.
And don't let anyone else tell you what it should be. Like Oracle Tree is a virtual agency by design, because I decided that's what I wanted for my own life. It was a completely selfish decision, and we made it work.
Yeah, awesome.
Agencies, if you look out into the world, should have offices and foosball tables and lots of glass and chrome. And we've never ever been that, because that's not what I want. And so I think that every business owner has the opportunity to create what they actually want to do. And sometimes that means saying no to what the status quo is or what is normally done. And that's how innovation happens as well. So I think that's the very, very first thing.
Yeah.
And then
we go into second step.
Yeah.
My favourite question I've ever learnt about business, and I ask this often, is what will your business look like when it's finished?
Mm-hmm.
Most people go a bit strange. They look at me going, what do you mean finished? I'm young. I love working. And I go, I get it. But if you went to the builder and said, build me a house, and he goes, how many stories do you want? And you go, I don't know, just start. That would be insanity, right? So the idea of finished is what you just described. And I also think people in business, they get to choose their own adventure. There is no right way to run a business. There's a way that works for you, and there's a way that doesn't work for you. And
Exactly.
if you don't put your spin on what you want, you'll end up getting whatever is dished up.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing for everything. Like it's the whole thing. If you don't steer the ship, the tides will take it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the very first thing. If business owners just realize that they were actually in charge of their business,
Yeah.
which I know sounds silly, but it feels like a lot of it's like the market pushes it, the clients push it, the team push it, and they're ending up running around putting out fires and not actually setting the direction. And so I think that's the very, very most important thing.
Right. So step
And
number one,
then
know what you want. Know what you
know what you want. Step 2, plan it out and have some kind of regular planning process that you're looking at regularly and actually reviewing. So we've got a particular planning process that's quarterly planning, and then we have weekly reviews and all that kind of stuff is what we do.
Yep.
You're saying that you plan every 8 weeks. Doesn't, like, again, no right way, but regular. It has to be regular. Like it doesn't, there's all sorts of different ways, but it has to be regular.
Well, the thing for me is I ask people, if you have your business plan, how often do you look at it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because if a builder has a building plan, how often do they
look at it
every single day, right?
Multiple times a day, probably checking the measurements on this.
Before we cut a hole in this wall, let's just double check it's in the right place, right?
Exactly.
So for me, the symptoms of a poor business planning process is the fact you're not looking at the business plan on a regular basis. You mentioned weekly. I think that's the minimum.
Yeah. Well, we have weekly leadership meetings, and we've got daily huddles.
Yeah.
And so, but it is that whole thing, and it's setting it all up. But you need to have a process, whatever the process is.
Great.
And then getting the right people around you to support. So I think a lot of the stuff is that sort of big picture way you think stuff. So I think that one really important thing is to know yourself, to know your own strengths and weaknesses, what you're good at, what you're not good at, and be really honest with yourself, and then get the right people around you to support you in the bits that you're not so great at, and be humble enough to let them and to get out of their way to do it.
Yeah. Great.
And if you get the right people and a plan,
yep,
and follow the plan and know where you're going, like all the other stuff becomes details. And yes, there are more steps to it, but without that stuff, you don't have anything.
Well, I think there's a Jim Collins in his Good to Great book talks about getting the right people on the bus.
Mm-hmm.
Another favourite of mine is Dan Sullivan wrote a book called Who, Not How.
Mm-hmm.
And he really talks about this notion of if you know how to do something, you're destined to do it forever.
Yeah.
If you find someone who can do it, you can hand that task over. Mm-hmm. And I think for a lot of people in business, the biggest trap is that they go into a business because they're good at something.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're not really in business, they're self-employed.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're really good at what they do, what ends up happening is not only are they self-employed, they get super busy.
Mm-hmm.
And so as they start to say, this is great, I'm getting plenty of work, which is the sort of key word here, they're getting plenty of work.
Mm-hmm.
I'm too busy to grow my business, and I can't find anyone who can do it the way I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
These are all the things that cement them into this corner of I'm self-employed.
Absolutely. And I've actually got a bit in the book about that, the difference between being self-employed and actually owning a business.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's mindset, and a lot of people think that they're business owners and they're not, they're self-employed.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the first choices you need to make. There's nothing wrong with being self-employed either. Like if that's what you want to do, then that's perfectly okay, but just know that that's what you're doing.
Yeah. Is it by design is what you're saying.
Exactly. Is it by design?
Say I'm self-employed is fine. And I know a lot of self-employed people that make a lot of money.
Yeah.
But
they don't want to have team. They don't want to have business. They don't want to have plans. They just want to take their work and do their work and be really high paid, self-employed, and not be on a salary and
Perfect.
kind of,
or have a lifestyle business where they can sort of float around. And I know a few friends of mine now have done this where they basically travel.
Yeah.
And they work while they're traveling. And they don't want a team. They just want to travel. And so they just work on their laptop wherever they are, make enough money to cover their costs. There was a great book, The 4-Hour Workweek.
Yeah.
Favorite, but I hated that book because the first thing it said is, hey, you should build a business system. I said, yeah, this is great. And then you should automate everything. This is great. And when you're making $70,000 a year, go and live in a third world country and you're now officially a millionaire. And it's like, that's a bit disappointing, but it's true, right? So I think sometimes people think it's all about making money, and I don't think that's accurate. I think, building a business that gives you lifestyle choices is about making sure you've got enough cash to live the lifestyle that you choose. And there's so many variables that people get thrown. They get sort of, it's all too hard, I'm just going to go to work.
And it depends too on what your purpose is too. Like if your purpose is to make an impact, then you as an individual won't be able to make as much of an impact as you leading a company that can work with more people and service more people in whatever you do, if you actually want to make a difference. So I think it depends on what your personal purpose is. So it all kind of comes. Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
It's a big question. Big questions.
it's a big question, and I think for a lot of people that's soul search. And as we move into the end of the year, I often push on people and say, I want you to just make sure that your vision for your business is right for you and clear, because it also
Mm-hmm.
changes. Because I think what people think they want um,
Mm-hmm.
is very appealing until you get it and you go, oh, that's not what I thought it was going to be. Because it's like when someone says, well, which car would you prefer, a Lamborghini or a Ferrari? It's like, I haven't driven either. So I can't tell
Mm-hmm.
you any difference between the two. So until I test drive both of them, it's not really a question that I can answer. And I think
Exactly.
the same happens with business is until you experience what you think you want, you may or may not understand what it actually is like.
Mm-hmm.
So look,
Exactly.
I'm pretty mindful of time, and I know that it is Halloween, and having a book called
It
Fixing
is. Hello.
Frankenstein Business during Halloween is spectacular timing on your part.
Mm-hmm.
But I think just before this call, you mentioned that you're actually doing a bit of a promo for Halloween.
Yeah. We're
So,
having Frankenstein Friday that's starting tomorrow, and we're going to be doing a promo on the book from tomorrow morning,
yep,
probably through until Black Friday. Um, so yeah, go to fixingfrankenstein.com. It's available on Kindle, and we'll have a special sale price starting tomorrow. It's going to be a surprise how much it is.
you'll be surprised how
It'll
much.
be good. It'll
But
be a surprise.
even at the current retail price, which is I think about $10 on Kindle,
Yeah,
um,
$10 on Kindle, free if you're on Kindle Unlimited.
yeah,
19.95 or $21 or something Australian for the hard copy. But yeah, go buy the book.
awesome. For
Fix
those
your
people who are
Frankenstein.
running the Frankenstein business, use Halloween as your excuse to fix it. And
Absolutely.
hopefully we can reset for the next calendar year, 2023, and make sure people have got some clear picture of what they're building.
Yeah, now's a really good time to start thinking about that sort of thing. It takes the thinking time and the processing time, and a lot of people take time off over Christmas and that sort of time. So I think that
Yeah,
if you put that time aside to really do the soul searching and think about what you really want, and like I said, I designed the book to be for busy business owners. It's not big words, it's not complicated. It's just really high level and really practical, and
yeah,
it's like a summary of my 25 odd years of experience in business from
yeah,
all different angles, so you can just kind of work out where you need to probably delve further. So
yeah.
hopefully it's helpful.
That's brilliant. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Marima, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, David. Beautiful. With pleasure.
I'm surprised you didn't put a Frankenstein mask on or something for
I
us.
know.
if,
Just
I had,
unprepared.
if I had the time, I would have created
I'll
something.
get one. All good.
Well, good. Thanks again for your time today, and I hope the people listening got some great value out of that. So
Yeah, me too. Reach out if you need any help, and I'm here for you.
awesome.
Great. Beautiful. Thank you.